Hi, I'm Kyle McMurray and I'm a certified sales funnel builder through Digital Marketer. And you're here because you have a business that you believe in, that it will change someone's life. So now what do? Run from the highest treetop and scream, "I'm here, buy my stuff"? How does that working for you? Chances are, if you've been marketing online for a little bit, it probably feels a little like this. So you have a great product. You know that people need it. So why don't they just buy it already? It's because we've forgotten something. Something essential. Something that we actually already know and we actually use it every day in our lives. But when it comes to our business, it's like we have amnesia. What is it? That's what I'm going to show you in this video. But first, I want to give credit to Ryan Deiss and Digital Marketer because that's where I got the majority of this from. Most importantly, Digital Marketer has a mission to double the sales of over 10,000 businesses in the next 5 years. One of them could be yours. Okay, but to start, a few years ago they did a survey, and I believe the results were 67% of young adults who are not married yet would like to get married at some point in their life. So now that you have that information, what does that mean? Does that mean that you can go down to your local singles bar or any bar, get on a bar stool and say, "I'm here. I know that I'd be a great husband. I know you guys want to get married. Line forms to the left. Let's go. Let's do this." That's not going to work. Why? Because it's creepy. Because we all know it doesn't work. But yet that's what so many business owners are trying to do on the internet every single day. Just because you know that people need your product doesn't mean that they know they need it, and even if they do, it doesn't mean they want to buy it from you. So we're going to come back to this dating analogy several times because marketing today, especially on the internet, isn't kind of like dating, it's exactly like dating. So how do you do it? How do you take someone who's a complete stranger and move them into being a customer, into a raving fan, and actually even into a brand ambassador or an advocate for your brand? To do that, you need a customer factory. A predictable selling system that takes people from complete strangers all the way to raving fans. Now, before we get too far into this factory, remember, if we want a sustainable business, this factory cannot be all about value extraction, meaning that we're always trying to grab the money. This is actually a two-way street. You need to create as well as extract value to make this work, just like in the real world. So let's talk about the things you need to make up a customer factory. You really only need three. You need raw goods inventory, in this case, prospects. You need a production process. This is your product or your service. And lastly, you need an assembly line, or what Digital Marketer calls a value journey, the customer value journey. The first thing you need is raw goods. Now, this is something that every factory starts with, right? Every factory has steel or sheet metal or widgets that come in through one door and that they get put into inventory until it's time to transform them into the product. For you as a business owner who's constructing a customer factory, your raw goods, of course, are your prospects, people who have a problem, who are dissatisfied. They're looking for a solution. They're in a raw state just like that steel or sheet metal is. The second thing you need is a production process. You need a way to deliver this value. Now, in a traditional factory, you have people with specialized skills or you have specialized machinery. It doesn't do much good if all this stuff is just sitting around, right, and no one's using it, or there's no process to make this work. To actually transform something from a raw state into a product, you need to work, and you need to actually work in a specific sequence. In a factory, sequence is king. You don't start the manufacturing process for an automobile by painting it, right? Or you don't put the window shield in first. That doesn't make any sense. The car wouldn't be able to be drivable if you did that. So let's go to an earlier example, the dating world. So your first step in a date, getting a date, isn't asking for marriage, right? It's not asking to go away for the weekend. It's, "Hi, I'm Kyle." So what is that journey that the prospect's going to go on so that you can deliver value to them and they can deliver value in the form of revenue to you? The first two steps of the customer factory are up to you. I can't give you that. But what we're going to focus on is the third, the assembly line. So how do we do that? What does that process look like? The first step of the assembly line, or the value journey, is awareness. How do we make these people even aware that you exist? More often than not, this is going to come in the form of advertising. We use advertising to show them that we exist, but awareness isn't enough. We also need to get them to engage. We got them to glance at us through advertising, but how do we turn that glance into a stare, as Ryan Deiss from Digital Marketer says? You know, it's pretty easy in this world today to get somebody to quickly glance at you. If you just think about some of the crazy stuff you see in Facebook or on social media, they'll get you to glance. But can they hold that glance? Can they turn that glance into a stare? That's a little more difficult, and it requires content. Content that's a lot like the content you're consuming now. So whether you know it or not, you're actually in an engagement phase as you watch this video. We are showing you some content to engage you. So how do we get them to engage with our message? We need to engineer that. Now the next phase is subscribe. So now that we've got them engaged, how do we get permission to follow up with them? And what are the steps to get them to come with us? Now this is an essential step because without this step, it's all been a wasted time. So to go back to the dating analogy, awareness is walking in wearing your best outfit, looking your absolute best so you get people to turn and look at you. Engagement is actually striking up a conversation with someone. If you don't get someone's number, then what's it all been for? You go home alone with no prospects and you get to go try it again. But if you continually do that, you never get anywhere. You never find anyone and you can never get into a relationship. You have to ask for the number. And as business owners, you have to ask for permission to follow up. Now, we use what we call a lead magnet to get that permission. A lead magnet, or what people can call gated content, is content that is highly desirable that sits behind something that people actually need to give us their email or contact information to get. We make sure that this content is something that they really desire and that it's a logical next step from the content they've already consumed, meaning the content they've seen in the awareness and the engagement phases. Now, the next step is conversion. This is super important because this is where we actually fundamentally change the relationship. Again, back to the dating analogy, we've gotten their number, but that's not enough, is it? We still have to call them up and ask them out on a date. We have to get some kind of commitment because up until now, it's been very passive on their part. They've just kind of been going along. Now we actually need to change the relationship and get some commitment. And people show commitment through two different ways. Through their wallet or through their calendar. Either one will work. This should not be a huge commitment. You would not, as a first date, ask someone to go away for the weekend with you or to get married. It's way too huge. It doesn't make any sense. We need to work, again, just like in the factory, we need to work in the correct sequence. So this should be a very small commitment. A small dollar amount or a small amount of time. And this is also why so many business owners fail on the internet because they're asking for a huge commitment right off the bat. Okay, now we've got them commit. How do we get them excited? So you've got that first date, but you're not out of the woods yet, are you? You've got to actually have a good time. You've got to make them want to see you again if you want to get to the ultimate goal, which is getting married. So how do we get them excited? Again, we use content. We encourage consumption at this point. Now that you've converted them into a customer, you want to make sure that they get super excited so that they move to the next stage, which is ascension. Now, unfortunately, this is where most businesses start. And they wonder why they have such a hard time getting customers online. It's because they're starting way deep in the process. They're way out of sequence, right? This is asking for marriage. Once we've gotten them to ascend, now we get them to advocate for us. How do we get them to give us a testimonial? How do we get them to give us a case study? How do we get them just to start saying nice things about us? How do we get them to defend us when someone writes a bad review? In the final stage, how do we get them to become an active promoter? How do we get them out there talking about us, being a brand ambassador, to actually bringing in new prospects for our customer factory? All right, so these are the stages of the value journey. Now let's take this a little further because a lot of people complicate marketing. But as far as this model that we've been discussing goes, marketing exists, or the role of marketing is to move prospects and customers seamlessly and subtly through each phase of the value journey. The question is always, where are they now and how can we get them to take the next step? Or where are they now and what assets do we need to get them to move to the next step in the journey? And that's really all it is. So if you think about it in this context, some of marketing should be actually encouraging consumption, because consumption is what helps people move them through this value journey. If they're not consuming, they're definitely not going to be advocating. And they're absolutely not going to be a brand ambassador or promoting. So just like date nights and flower and candy shouldn't stop when you get married, marketing shouldn't stop when someone buys or ascends to your high-level product. We need to continue marketing so that we can keep people moving through the value journey. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds great in theory, but I mean, does it really work in the real world? I mean, how does this really play out? It seems very complicated or just not right. So let's take a look at how this might work in your business. Now, keep in mind that if you're in a serious relationship or you're married, there was a time when you didn't know that person and they didn't know you. And somehow you were able to go from being complete strangers into having children together, sharing a life. How did that happen? You followed a specific sequence. Just like there are people out there today who have no idea about your business. They haven't met you yet. They haven't heard of you yet. And yet someday, some of them will become brand evangelists. Some of them will become committed to bringing you new customers. So how do we do that? Let's take a look.